What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from Zoom again, and this time we are here with Gematria. Great to be able to talk with you. Ray, it's good to see you again, and Steve, it's great to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Yes, good to see you, Alex. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, anytime, man, anytime. Ray, we were talking right before the world ended in NAMM 2022. One minute we were
That's right.
one
Yeah,
minute we're enjoying Adrian Blue's music, hanging out at NAMM, and then before you know it, the world ends. So, what a
just stopped. Yeah,
what a way to go out. But
totally.
but it's so awesome to have you both here. With Gematria II, The Spindle of Necessity, out now. This is a fantastic instrumental album. Was there a sort of thought process behind the making of this album, or being that it was like instrumental, it was a very like improvised and experimental process?
Um, there's well, no, there's yeah, no, there was definitely methods and processes we used. The first song on the record is actually one that we started working on in 2018, maybe 2017. I don't remember. But like when we started playing shows, when our first EP dropped, we worked out that song in the room, and that was the kind of catalyst for the record. So Steve actually went in the studio and did drums for that, and then I did the rest at home. And then when the pandemic hit, it's like, okay, let's make a record. Let's flesh this thing out and just start getting ideas together. So, yeah, and we take a lot of inspiration from just different sources. So, when you write music, really, if you like a lot of different kinds of music, you're kind of like sometimes you can be like, oh man, I don't know, what am I gonna what am I gonna write today, or like, what do I want to do? So yeah, we just use some different inspirations to kind of get us into different zones.
Mhm.
Steve, I don't know if you want to add to that at all, but
No, yeah, that's true. It was definitely, a thought process going in. And then even after that track that you had mentioned, since we were doing it remotely, there was a lot of systems that we put in place first to get it going.
yeah.
Being that this was like a remotely made album, we couldn't foresee the world taking the turn it did. Did it almost feel like that this influenced the music or added a different layer of emotion or maybe even context to the album that we wouldn't have had previously?
Yeah, I would say most definitely. Yeah, it's definitely there's lots of it that's very introspective. And during before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic, I got a lot into different esoteric studies, just trying to make sense of things that way and gaining inspiration from a lot of that. And a lot of those different systems have a lot of math involved, a lot of numbers. There's sacred geometry, there's Kabbalah, and then there's Gematria itself, which is the science of equating words with numbers. So all of that kind of played into this big time. Yeah. So, we could take inspiration from any of those different systems, take the number sets that come from it and apply it musically. So, and that's how a lot of the compositions got jump started for me, especially, and Steve works that way too, I believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. And then especially on a couple tracks where we did the drums first, I really went into that heavy before Ray even heard what we were going to do. So on a couple songs. Yeah.
Yeah. So on Unconquered Sun, which was the first single, and By Its Own Nature, Steve went into the studio and just recorded a drum composition first. So I had no idea what he was going to do. I had no idea what I was going to get. And then, yeah, when he gave it to me, I just had to kind of make sense of it on my own. So that was a really fun process. Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear that's how it started sometimes, because every band I've interviewed, whether they're writing metal or they're writing instrumental stuff, whatever, they say it normally starts off with a riff. And I've asked drummers numerous times if like has there ever been a time where a drum pattern can help dictate the direction of the song rather than just hearing the music first before laying it down. If maybe people were to get to know you guys personally better and like maybe get to overall know your songwriting process more, would they be able to listen to a song and be like, okay, that started with drums and that one started with guitar?
Yeah, and I think if you listen to those two songs I just mentioned, Unconquered Sun and By Its Own Nature, and if you listen with that perspective, you'll hear it. The drums really drive the whole rhythmic structure of the tune. Yeah, all the riffs on those two songs, especially, I locked in the riffs to Steve's pattern. It's really hard. It's much like a metal band would in reverse. Usually, it's like the guitar riff comes and then the drums kind of line up their beat to it.
Yeah. Um, being that like Gematria, being that both of you play with multiple projects, Ray, you with 6 Feet Under and so many other bands, and then of course Steve playing with Daughter Vision and No Use for Humans and so many other great bands. Do your other projects maybe help influence your hand with the making of music in Gematria, or do you guys kind of tend to separate yourselves and put yourself in different mindsets with this project as opposed to your other ones?
For me, it's a different mindset, but Ray's experience might differ. But there was one song, the elusive one, that came from like a bass, fretless bass exercise kind of that I was fleshing out. That aside from that, though, everything else was a totally different thought process for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for me, this project is all encompassing. It takes all the mindsets from my other bands, and it takes the mindset I have when I'm in all my other projects. I know that sounds a little weird. So for me, this project's all about being open. So at any moment, I can go into a metal mindset and make a riff that's really driving, or I can go into like a jazz improvisational kind of mindset, and that happens a lot on the record. A lot of the solos you hear are improvised, and then I could get into kind of like proggy, mathy kind of thing. I try to really, with this record, it was all about being open to whatever kind of hit me that day that I was doing the songs, and then just kind of let it ride without thinking too much about anything.
Mm-hmm. And because of that, like, do you almost feel like that this project is a little bit more easy to like experiment with and try new things? Because like 6 Feet Under is without a doubt like a death metal band. You can't exactly have serenading harmonies on an album like Nightmares of the Decomposed. So
no, correct. Yeah, this is the most free project I have as far as just it can go anywhere at any time. I really like Bill Laswell and John Zorn and stuff like that. So it's that stuff, when you listen to it, can go in any direction at any moment, any second, any measure. So yeah, a lot of that's kind of the big inspiration on this record for me from that.
Yeah. When I hear the soloing on here, I do feel a lot of emotion and a lot of get a lot of imagery behind it. But Steve, one question I have for you is because there's always a misconception because drums don't have melody that it's not a very emotional instrument. But the way that I hear the rhythm move on here, there has to be emotion channeled in here, as well as the concept that Ray was mentioning before. That also has to maybe help guide your hand with regards to how you lay down rhythm as well, right?
Absolutely. And it is emotional content for me. And I do think melody a lot of the times, especially like the tom patterns, or even just breaking up the beat kind of like independently. I think of it as a melody sometimes, especially if it's like not like a straight groove. If it does a little more, or if it's like an odd meter or something, I definitely think of it as like more melodic based.
Could the effect of the guitar also maybe influence that? Like I've talked with like a bunch of metalcore drummers where like when there's clean singing they have to hit the ride cymbals more, but when it's screaming it's more crash, and that could just be over analyzing the ever loving hell out of it. But like does the certain sound of the guitars when you're not laying down the drum first also maybe help you on a technical level?
Absolutely. And I want to, especially if the guitar melody is doing something dynamic and kind of peaks and valleys, I want to be able to like serve that properly. Mm-hmm. So totally.
And going back to the gematria element of like having numbers and words and all this, do you feel like maybe that you're also creating your own language and expressing numbers and words through notes and beats?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it for sure. Because if you take any word and get the numerical value, you can split that up and then make melodies out of it. So, and I even use another system based on the I Ching, which is based on hexagrams, which is 6 lines. So I make 6 notes out of that, and then the way the various lines get thrown when you roll the coins, you get these different line shapes, and then I would alter the notes. So the song that Taming Power the Small came from that. So when I rolled the I Ching, I got this 6-line pattern, and I came up with the notes. I think it was, what were the notes? I think it was like E, F sharp, G. No, sorry, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, and C. So those are the notes that I used to write that whole song. Except for the solo, I went a little wild on the solo. But every riff in that song, if you go and listen to it, has those 6 notes in it. Yeah.
But being that there was so much analyzing, this is kind of like a we're gonna now that you mentioned concept, we're gonna get real deep into it. But
Yeah.
being that there is like a lot of would you almost say that like research and looking at other mediums of art is just as much as the songwriting process as sitting down with the guitar, sitting down with your kit, and exploring the sound in a way.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, Steve, do you want to go first on that one, or?
Absolutely. When you use a separate art or system, um, it's as close as you can get as like kind of getting your ego out of the way, because you can see where that takes you. And that's what's attractive to me, because like whenever I use a system, especially if it's for the first time, I don't know what it's going to sound like when it's over, or like I don't know which direction it's going to go, and that's very attractive to me. So that was big in making this record for me.
Yeah, and all art feeds into this completely. I mean, it's the feeling. When you look at an amazing painting, right? You're transported. You're in this mystical element where you're just like in awe, right? So for me, it's about getting into that state of awe. Not in awe of myself, just in awe of that creative process and of music itself and the feelings and the way the notes affect me at the moment. So if I can get into that place where I'm like just in awe of the beauty that is coming out, and again, it's not egotistical at all. It's just trying to get past that and get to the point where music is pure.
Of course.
So yeah, when I can get into that zone, the things just flow out.
Mm-hmm. Do you but is there a time where also maybe your personal experiences or your personal lives could also be something that influences the sound as well, or is gematria like a pure escapism where you kind of don't want to bring your own self into it?
Oh yeah, no, that's a really good question. No, so everything I just said, like that, when I get to that place, at that point, then I can express myself emotionally or whatever is going on. So the taming power of the small, when I came up with those notes, it sounded very formulaic, but when I started playing them, it started tapping into feelings. I was maybe feeling a little withdrawn or introspective or down that day, and that song has that kind of vibe at the beginning anyway. So yeah, no, as soon as the notes start coming together and you start playing, like the main thing for me is to find an emotion that I can put into that, to find something, and of course that comes from your personal experience and what's going on in your life.
Definitely. There's Henry Matisse once said that every painting is a self-portrait, so like there's really no escaping yourself when creating.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Awesome.
Now, being that this is though an instrumental album, even though we went so deep within the concept, do you want this album to also be open to interpretation, or do you kind of want the listener to maybe be engaged in the context as much as the music itself?
No, music should be a personal, experience for everybody. So, for me, the other important thing about the record is that it's a journey of some kind. Everything we said, like for me, like when I listen to a record, it's like a movie or a journey or a trip, or you're kind of letting the record take you through these different mind states and feelings and emotions, and hopefully the record does that. That was my goal with it towards the end, was just to make sure that if you listen from start to finish, you were going to go somewhere, and then maybe you wanted to take the ride again, once you get to the end. So I don't know, Steve, you add to that?
No, I concur with that 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it better when you guys are writing together, especially since this record was written more in isolation, but is it better for any band for that matter? It doesn't even have to apply to Gematria, but like, do you feel that it's better if everybody in the band is really in the same headspace or on the same page or feeling the same way when making stuff together? Or could you guys feeling different ways and bringing in your different experiences maybe actually help enhance the songwriting process?
Yeah, for me, it's all about, you got to find the people that you like to work with, that are kind of simpatico with what you do, and Steve and I have this innate trust where I know if I give him something, he's going to come back with something that I like. I mean, yeah, that's just like, and I trust him to do that, and it's open. So it's like, if I give him something, whatever he comes up with, it's cool, and sometimes we'll guide each other a little bit, but most of the time it's just like, whatever he's thinking or feeling about that certain piece, he adds that to it, and same with me. If he gives me something, I'll add my stuff to it. Yeah. Steve, I don't know if you want to chime in there.
Yeah, I would agree. Although I think there's a couple times where we've been,
oh yeah,
far, yeah, and that makes for interesting stuff too. So, for me, it's both. But yeah, there's definitely like an innate trust with, we were fans of each other before we did this. So like, it's what made us want to work together. So
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I've been in bands where it's the opposite, and you're just butting heads all the time, and you can get great stuff that way too. It's just a little more painful.
Definitely,
Sure.
definitely. But I mean, after Slipknot put out Iowa, it goes to show that animosity is sometimes great fuel as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
But now being again talking about the isolation element, but really just for songwriting in general, do you find it maybe easier to cultivate any idea when you are more alone in your element and there's really nothing between you and your instrument, or is there something maybe better or even different for that matter of coming up ideas when you both are in the presence of each other?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, you have more time obviously when you're at home, when you're by yourself to come up with things. But you do miss you see a lot of creating is reactive too. So if we're in the room and Steve's playing something and I react to that, it's going to bring me somewhere that I wasn't before, that I couldn't get to. So, there's benefits to both for sure. If too much of one and not the other it can be a problem sometimes though, because if you're in the room and doing that all the time, you don't necessarily have time to think of exactly the thing that you want to do, that you want to say. And sometimes it's even hard in the room to hear what you're doing. So when you take it home, you can kind of refine it a little bit and try it,
That's true. And sometimes like too much time by yourself, you get lost in it sometimes.
Yeah, and then the artistic project is just total madness at the same time. Like it's
Yep.
Yeah. You have to keep in mind, and you have to really keep in mind where you want to go. For me, that's the big thing. I always have that in mind. It's like, where do I want to end up? If I don't have that, I'm screwed, because then I just start noodling and making like 25 parts that make no sense, that I think I'd like a lot. And then I hear it and I'm like, oh, this is terrible. I don't know what I was doing.
But you also had like additional musicians contribute to this as well, like where the way you brought in Emily Groh for the vocals in Unconquered Sun, and you brought in some really cool like flute soloing on like the title track. Like, was this all preconceived visions, like we need some chorusing here, we need some flute here, or it was just like spur of the moment ideas?
Nah, I surprised Steve with the Emily thing, because Emily sings in Doctor Vision with him, so I just behind his back went to Emily. I was like, hey, can you
band affair?
I'm like, hey, can you sing these, like match the guitar? Like I gave her the ending guitar piece is like 3 notes over and over, but I gave her like some chords to sing, and I just said pick and sing any octave, and then I surprised Steve with. I don't think Steve heard it until we mixed it, actually. I don't think I even told him until we mixed it.
Were you mad? He went to your other band behind your back? That's like,
no, I was like, I'm like, this ending is fantastic. Like, how did you do it? It was, and then we had a good laugh about it.
Yeah.
That's
and then Melissa Keeling played the flute solo, and she's incredible, man. She plays the flute. It's called a glissando flute, where the mouthpiece slides in and out. So it's like a whammy bar almost on the flute. Plus, at that point, she plugs into pedals, and she uses a whammy pedal too, a pitch shifter, and delay, and all kinds of effects. It's such a wild sound. I don't remember how that came about. I think we just were like, hey, you want to get Melissa solo on the ending? And we're like, yeah, cool. I don't even, Steve, do you remember? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, we had the ending, and it was just an idea, and she was like, all
I think I was gonna put a solo over it, and I'm like, I don't really want to. It wouldn't be right, because I already had a big solo in the middle, and I think Steve might have suggested it. Yeah, it came out awesome. I really love the way she sounds on that.
Before you know it, Lizzo's gonna be collaborating and bringing a flute solo.
As long as she brings that really old flute.
The one that James Madison used. Hey, if you could get that to happen, imagine just a metal band goes into like the National Archives or wherever that is in DC and records a studio that way. That would be a great like concept album on like American history.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
I could just see. I could just see the guitar player being very disappointed, be like, "Where are all the pedals at?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep. All right, here comes the difficult part. Ray, I can't remember if I asked you this at NAM, so I'll ask you both. Steve, you could go first. But how do you know when you are finished with a song, or just knowing when your part is done in a way, and there's really nothing more to be added or taken away?
I felt that way on this record, most tracks, and it's what I said earlier about letting the kind of system take over. Like it kind of did that on its own, and like I heard the beginning, middle, and end, and like and I was just like, again, I was trying to keep a lot of myself out of it. So like when I thought I had something done, that's when I gave it off to Ray, or if it was already done when it was brought to me, like if that's even easier. But I always felt the completion like pretty instantly.
Yeah, for me it was it was a little tough sometimes. So because once Steve had the drums, I would sit at home and just record and tweak the sounds, and I sort of pre-mixed the record, not really pre-mixed, but I got the sounds in place before we sent it off to be mixed by Adam Baccarelli, who did a freaking awesome job. But I spent a lot of time tweaking sounds and everything. But for me, again, I had the end goal in mind. It's like I wanted this song to have this impact and this feeling and this like emotional journey to it. So when I would tweak and tweak until I felt those things. Okay, you know what I mean? So, and if I was tweaking and it wasn't getting me to that place, I would stop. So as long as I got to the song to the point where it made the statement that we wanted to make, then that's when I would kind of call it quits. Yeah. Otherwise, you can go forever. I was adding parts and stuff, and like I was like, this isn't really helping the mood and the power of the song. So you just stop.
Yeah, but knowing what you want, I'd imagine that on the journey to getting there, you may have discovered things like that you never knew you wanted, right?
Yeah. Right, yeah,
Totally.
It's true. Yeah, and it's all about being moved. I wanted to be moved by it, and if I wasn't being moved by a certain part, I would mess with it until it got to that place. Yeah.
Fair enough. So before we go, I want to thank you both so much for your time today and for such an awesome chat. This is a fantastic album, and I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear it. We need to get more people on board. This album is epic, and I can't wait for people to hear it. Is there just anything
Thanks,
else?
Alex.
Anytime. Is there just anything else with Gematria II, the Spindle of Necessity, that we could be expecting? Could you maybe be expecting to take this live? We would love to see Gematria live, and
yeah, we've played a couple shows already, and we're gonna try to book some more in the next coming months too. So yeah, we'll look that. We'll have that. We'll have a couple more music videos coming out too, and then hopefully there's a bunch more shows as the winter comes along.
Hell yeah, this is a good winter album. I feel like.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I'll be listening to this during the first blizzard. I always pick an album whenever we get the first snowstorm. This is gonna be my first snowstorm album of 2023.
Awesome. That's
Excellent.
Great. Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, but thank you guys so
Awesome.
much. Everybody, we are here with Gematria. Be sure to check out Gematria II, the Spindle of Necessity. We will see you next time on Heavy New York. That was perfect, man. Thank you.
All right, sweet.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Alex.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
And I probably should have asked you first. Spindle is how you pronounce it, right?
Oh yeah, Spindle.